17 U.S.C. 107 federal law allows citizens to use copyrighted media for fair use. That is criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody.
Kuma, Yahweh, we are put to you there. We are listening to me. Kuma, Yahweh, we are put to you there. We are used to me for their Kuma, Yahweh, we are put to you there. We are used to me for their arise of you, O Yahweh. Let your enemies be scattered, and let those that hate thee flee from before thee. Let all of Yasharah, Yisrael, who love, worship, and praise Yahweh, give him thanks by saying hallelujah.
So, shalom, shalom, and welcome family to Live Light Well, really into all truth, I prefer, because Live Light Well was my channel. So welcome, my name is Rachel, and today I wanted to share with you just some research a friend of mine shared with me. I know a lot of people already know about Henrietta'S. And so let me just pray you guys in. I'm going to put my hat on, cover my head, and just say, may the Ruach HaKodesh lead you into all truth and show you things to come. In the name of Yahushua HaMashiach, seal out the enemy, bind him, and place him in the pit of hell to await the judgment of Yahushua HaMashiach. Be a wall of fire around us, a covering over us, the rock that we stand on, and let us dwell in your shadow, Almighty Yahuwah. Baruch, bless everyone, the hearers and the listeners, and blind and bind and deafen the enemy to the words of revelation that I'll speak by your spirit. Empty me of myself and fill me with your Ruach HaKodesh, who will lead me into all truth and show me things to come in the name of Yahushua. Amen. So, hi, Matthew. Welcome, guys. So I just was covering my head while I was praying. But today I had a friend kind of call me feeling very distressed and upset when she had learned about Henrietta'S. She hadn't heard of Henrietta'S before, and I don't know if you have, so I'm going to share that with you. And I'm going to go into some genetic stuff today, and I just want you guys to remember that yes, I do respond to my viewers, Matthew. I just want you guys to remember that as we are in end times, it's a time when everyone is going to be grafted in who receives Yahushua HaMashiach and follows the appointed times. So I will talk about other nations and how Israel wasn't supposed to mix in with them or anything like that. However, I'm doing that just to point out the law to you. Okay, so that you will, sorry, I'm just going to put more of my face in the camera here, guys, so that you will understand Torah and the commands that were given to Israel before Israel, as Matthew 24 says, fell by the edge of the sword and was led away captive into all nations. And so when you hear me talk about these various groups of people, I'm probably quite mixed myself. So I'm just talking about how Yah viewed the situation according to Torah. But of course, Israel has been spread abroad as dung on the earth and to mix in with all nations. And so this is for their redemption. And so please don't view it with malice. I'm just kind of, I use a very factual type of speaking and speech, which coming from a woman can be very challenging to a lot of people and often a lot of men, but not my men who watch this. Praise Yah. So yeah, I'm just very particular and specific because I am talking about the word. So please don't take it with the spirit of offense. All right. So just teaching the word so that people can get an understanding of where we are today. So I'm just going to share my screen here with you guys and tell you a little bit about Henrietta Lacks. And so for those of you who don't know about her, I'm just going to read this to you. And this is what my friend shared with me, and she was very distressed. And I actually talked to her about it for about an hour and a half. Like, she is usually like, she's like, I'm not going to let anything upset me. Like, the most worst crisis in the world can hit her. And she's like, it's not going to happen. And everything turns around. But this really got her going. So she wanted me to do a story on it. And I was like, it upset me as well. And I was like, I don't want it. But, you know, I prayed about it. And so here it is. So if you don't know who Henrietta Lacks is, let's get into it here. And so I am not with the feminist agenda, and they're calling it Women's History Month because Black women tend to be womanist, okay? Because we're womb men, right? So in celebration of Women's History Month, the Imagine Institute is highlighting women whose impact continues to benefit caregiving and education. And now it says, following the expansion of the, read it here, eligibility to all child care workers in Washington state, we honor the lasting legacy of Henrietta Lacks, whose sacrifice made this groundbreaking jab possible. So what they're talking about is the fact that the research that was done on her genetics, her genetic material, which was actually stolen from her, is part of what enabled them to develop the jab. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of the history. Henrietta Lacks was born in Roanoke, Virginia in 1920 to an impoverished Black family of tobacco farmers. Her mother died in childbirth, and when she was 4, she went to live with her relatives. Not much is known about it. She married David Lacks. Now, note her name is Henrietta Lacks. Henrietta Lacks, okay? Lacks, Henrietta Lacks, okay? So she moved to Baltimore, and at a certain point, she was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of cervical cancer and passed away in October of that year, leaving behind a husband and 5 children, okay? Now, her family never imagined that she could one day be referred to as the modern mother of medicine. Without her knowledge or consent, a tissue sample collected during a biopsy had been retained for medical research by Johns Hopkins, doing all kinds of stuff. Hospital where she received cancer treatments. Her tissue then came to be the first documented case of an immortal cell line, an immortal cell line. And so we're going to go into the genetics of the Hebrews, okay? While typical cells do not survive long outside of the body, astonishingly, Miss Lacks' cells continue to survive and replicate indefinitely, making it possible for scientists to develop some of the most groundbreaking jabs of the 20th century. And her cells were named HeLa cells. Helios, Heliopolis, the pillars of Heliopolis. This is Babylonian very clearly, right? Hellenist. So HeLa cells, and her name, of course, was Henrietta, right? And they proved instrumental in studying the effects of radiation, as well as developing in vitro fertilization methods, so genetic modification, right? Testing, cloning, cancer treatments. Her cells were even sent into space in 1962 to study zero gravity. I don't believe in space, but they were sent there, I believe. The outer realms that, yeah, push people out to. So Miss Lacks' family was not informed of the use of the cells until her children were approached in 1973 by researchers at Johns Hopkins. Her family received no compensation for her contributions to medical research, despite resulting in a multi-billion-dollar industry. Now we're going to show you how much genetic material they took from her. Okay. In 2010, a collection of wealthy donors convened to address reparation to her family after a publication of the best-selling book, The Immortal Life of Henrietta Lacks. Today, Miss Lacks continues, for it was her cell line that was again used to develop and test the jab that stand to benefit billions of people around the world. Humanity owes a debt of gratitude to Miss Lacks. For more information on Henrietta and her immortal cell line, check out these articles. So Smithsonian Magazine or Nature or Hindustan. So Hindu, that's Babylonian Times, right? So now the interesting thing is that she died of cervical cancer. She didn't live eternally. So there is a lot of curiosity around this question, because I think it's important to understand and question these kinds of things, because we know that under the curse, Israel is cursed in the curses of Deuteronomy, where the women will rule over the men and the women will be leaders. And so there's this constant, and you know, as women, we really don't want that. I don't want that. I would prefer to be led, and I would prefer men lead. That's my feeling. It's too much responsibility to lead. I would say that, even though, you know, I'm starting to enjoy it because I have a lot of support, but I still think it's more so the man's role. And then the woman's when the man's falling down, which is usually the case in captivity. So, but there's a tendency within American culture to celebrate the single woman, to celebrate the achievements of women and exemplify and amplify them. And single mothers and all of this kind of thing. And it's just part of the curse. And so we have this whole thing of them, you know, Henrietta Lacks being celebrated by Women's History Month and all of this sort of thing. And it was, her genetic material was involuntarily taken, and it was abused, and it has been spread all over without her permission or authorization. So that's a great crime. And so how they can be presuming to celebrate, I don't know. And when we think about it, she has this immortal gene cell, right? But she died. Now there's some other immortal things in this world that are also in a lot of the products that people are taking in genetically, okay? And so that includes this creature called the Hydra, which is immortal, okay? And we know this is in the jab, right? And so also the WHO is celebrating her. And it says a posthumous award is bestowed on the late Henrietta Lacks, okay? And it recognizes her life, legacy, and contribution to medical science without her permission. How can they be sitting there celebrating the fact that they took something from her without her permission? So Dr. Tedros Adhanom, so this is Tedros. So this is an Edomite Ethiopian doctor who is running the W organization, and he's honoring her, okay? And so they're saying that they're recognizing the world-changing legacy of this Black American woman who died of cervical cancer 70 years ago, October 1951. And while she sought treatment, researchers took biopsies, as I said, and they have allowed for incalculable scientific breakthroughs in things such as HPV, the polio vaccine drugs, HIV, and cancers, and most recently, the jab. So let's take a look at what that legacy really is, okay? And I know I've literally, YouTube has put the brakes on me. I've got like 4 or 5 viewers. And I can see they put the brakes on me. Yeah, bless. Hallelujah. Praise Yah. So anyway, so let's look at that legacy. Okay. It's well documented that when they were distributing these oral vaccines, that there was an outbreak of polio. So they announced a healthy polio vaccination campaign. And then a new outbreak was seen immediately afterwards. 2 children were paralyzed after being vaccinated against polio. All right. And then a new wild form of it developed. Okay. And it's this oral form of polio. And look at all these children in Africa taking it. Look at that infant being given it. All these children, small children. Okay. It's an affordable version that uses a weakened version of the virus, and this is the problem. And there's no need for syringes, but it says that it didn't pose a particular risk, but it was associated with other negative jab effects. The weakened virus, when it's given to children, will replicate in their intestine and encourages their body to produce antibodies to it. Unfortunately, then they then excrete it, and it creates no incubation time. And so there were more than a dozen African companies currently dealing with polio outbreaks caused by the vaccination in Zambia, Nigeria, the Congo, and there were viruses in 11 different additional cases of polio in the Sudan, as well as environmental samples. So it just got everywhere. The WHO boasted that Africa was free of this polio virus, but it spread another one, a new one. Sound familiar? Okay. The problem was also in Pakistan and Afghanistan, who saw large surges in cases. The region is certified as free of wild PV after 3 years without any official cases. However, 4 years ago, at one point, it was paralyzing 75,000 children a year across the continent. So is that a good and lasting legacy of Henrietta'S, the use of her cells for testing? And so, unfortunately, these stories serve as a reminder of how serious the repercussions of this kind of mass medical treatment can be. Okay. And it says it marks the second time a virus has been completely eradicated in Africa after smallpox was eliminated 40 years ago. So it was eliminated 40 years ago, and then they brought it back, and they brought back a new strain, and they paralyzed all these children in Pakistan and all over Africa. And so that was what they brought out of this research with her cells, with Henrietta'S cells. It sounds like her cells were lacking something. Heliopolis, right? Hell cells, okay? So I'm not trying to put her down, because I'm sure she was a wonderful woman, but none of this happened with her permission. So let's go on and look at some other things. Now, the other thing that it talked about was HPV, human papilloma virus, okay? Then we find that there was a spate of people being injured by Gardasil. Horrible medical ordeal, while doctors call this girl a liar because she went through this terrible ordeal. And it says young girls were being permanently damaged by Gardasil. But instead of listening to the evidence of a shocking lack of safety in this jab, right? The doctors and vaccine pushers and drug companies insisted all these girls were lying when they complained of their symptoms, okay? They were suffering debilitating health consequences. And of course, the companies had complete immunity in court, all right? So you can go and read it. She said that she suffered for 5 years from the side effects. And I had a friend who had taken it as well, and she has a lot of autoimmune illnesses, okay? She's got brain fog, all kinds of things. She's slow, she gets colds easily, she's not functioning well. She hasn't been for years, and she has to take all of these herbs all the time. She said she went to school for 4 hours and then to gymnastics, and then she went into a cheerleading competition. And then that's how she lived as a child. Then after her first injection, it hurt more than a normal one. And then she had soreness and redness. And then she had fatigue and a sore throat. And so she was running a fever, got nauseous. And then she had a terrible rash. And she was told, and then she had extreme fatigue, joint pains, leg pains, shoulder pains, dizziness. This is all autoimmune illness from this thing. And she went to an infectious disease specialist who told her not to get the third shot. So she had to take a second one, and she went ahead and got it. And her white and red blood cells were completely wiped out. And she was told that if she was to do a handstand, her gums would start bleeding and she could bleed to death. So this is what it did to her. When she finally started getting better, but she had not at 15 received her menstrual cycle. And she got a hemangioma on her lip. And it's only something that you find, this is in her senior year, in babies. She started getting very sick and missed weeks of school at times. She started getting severe bronchitis. She was unable to shake it. And these are a lot of the symptoms that people were also reporting. So Henrietta'S, this is the connection. Her genetics were used, her gene material that was stolen from her without her permission and sold for billions of dollars was used to create the polio vaccine, which had deleterious effects, and to create this HPV vaccine, which had deleterious effects, autoimmune illnesses. She started getting severe depression. She had to take Zoloft. And she was always sleeping, never had any energy. And she had pain in her lower back, pelvis, hips, backs of the legs, and knees. So this is all autoimmune stuff, restless legs and all this kind of thing. But these were common symptoms for people who took this vaccine. So this is part of the legacy, right? And I'm going to go into the other ones because it was used to develop drugs for HIV and cancers, and most recently, right? So when we look at the HIV case, right? Let's look into that. So you guys will recall I did this video on guinea pigs. Okay. And let me see, I'll start here. One second, guys. Hi, welcome, Paul Sticks. How are you? So, just want to make sure you guys understand this, what I'm talking about here. I just had some notes. And so the children who were used to create the HIV drugs, okay, were Black and Hispanic. And today they're using, for the treatment of pandemics today, they're using another thing only on Blacks and Hispanics and not on white people or Chinese people. So we're going to go into that in a minute, but this is one of the common themes here. So I just want you to notice the common theme. So I just have to go to 1146 and then 2040. So this talks about the side effects. So this is where it says that it was Black and Hispanic and poor, okay? Black and Hispanic and poor children were used, okay? So it was all people, okay? Like Gentiles as well. All right. And let me just find this next one, 1146. Screen share with you guys. So it was Black and Hispanic. And here's the side effects. It's really gruesome. So warning, you guys, warning. All right.
Most severe warning that these drugs can have and still be prescribable to human beings before they're taken off the market. They're lethal.
Muscle wastage.
So here are the symptoms of the diseases, and they were given to these children
Today.
and these children suffered really
We
terrible.
found documentation listing some of the experiments carried out on HIV children at the home. One was for treating herpes. Another involved giving children double doses of the measles vaccine. And yet others involved whole cocktails of drugs with side effects admitted by the manufacturers, including severe stomach pain, muscle wastage, organ failure, and many more.
Side effect is a euphemism for undesired direct effects. The effects of the anti-HIV drugs are quite serious. In fact, if you look at the insert that comes with these drugs, you will see virtually all of them will have a black box warning label, which is the highest, most severe warning that these drugs can have and still be prescribable to human beings before they're taken off the market. They're lethal.
3,000 miles west of Manhattan, Dr. David Raznick is internationally renowned for his work on numerous diseases, including cancer.
I'll scroll it up a little so we can see the years and everything. And it's AIDS cases, deaths.
He studied the effects of HIV drugs on patients, particularly children.
Young are not completely developed yet. The immune system isn't completely mature until your person's in their teens, typically.
We asked for his opinion on some of the incarnation trials.
We're talking about serious, serious side effects. Didanosine, all by itself, is a very dangerous drug. Zidovudine is our famous AZT, which has never been shown to be life-saving. It also causes severe anemia. Nevirapine is the drug that also causes...
So never found to be life-saving and causing severe anemia. That's AZT.
Stevens-Johnson syndrome, the flaking in the skin, and very, very dangerous and debilitating. It's horrible and painful and also lethal. These children are going to be miserable. They're absolutely going to be miserable. They're going to resist taking them after a while. They're going to probably take them when people give it to them. They're going to suffer so much AZT all by itself. They're going to have cramps. They're going to have diarrhea. They're not going to
So
eat.
these are experiments done through our favorite doctor of the year, but so I just am going to show you another video that discusses how, because it was also distributed heavily in Africa, AZT and other of these vaccines. And this is what the leader of South Africa found. And Mbeki, he was one of the leaders, he's no longer, but he was a very world-renowned leader. And this is how he dealt with having these AIDS medications or the AIDS diagnosis brought into his country. This is what he thought of it.
In the literature, that some of these AIDS drugs had a very high toxic effect. And so we said, I said, that therefore we must look at this matter, because it may be that it is the drug that kills people rather than the illness because of the toxicity.
So there you go. So that's what the Africans were saying about it when it came out, the AZT drug. Now, also, Kennedy's son has written a book on this as well, and he said the same thing. And now I'm going to take you back to what I was showing you before, which is the natural cures that were used for people diagnosed with it, okay?
You have to forgive me for what they did.
Mona had children, Sean and Dana, who tested HIV positive. By the state's definition, they're not actually her children. Mona is their great aunt and legal guardian of her niece's children. And so the children were remanded to the state for foster care.
Okay, and why were they remanded? Because the kids that she was looking after, she stopped giving them the drug. And because she stopped giving them the drug, they started getting better. And so they took her out of the custody. They took the children out of her custody. And then there was another woman named Christine McGorry who tested positive for HIV, and her doctor told her to get ready to die, but she wasn't interested in dying. And so she was told that AIDS drugs would make her sick. And so instead of, she chose to rely on natural methods to support her health. And a year and a half later, she was so healthy, her doctor told her there was something wrong and she needed to retest. And she did retest several times. Test came back negative, intermediate, and positive. And then she started investigating the medical literature and found what was recounted above, that HIV tests are highly inaccurate. So the tests are inaccurate. And so she developed a foundation for people to make informed decisions about her health, their health. And so you see how, what is this legacy? Is this a good legacy? I mean, it wasn't with her permission. And here's informed doctors in South Africa meeting around that last president's conference about the drug being toxic and possibly causing
And
it.
what is the cause of AIDS? At least the conventional view has not produced anything. It has never cured one single AIDS patient in 18 years, and it is now the cause or the reason for 200,000 people getting ACT, which is an extremely toxic drug. The most toxic, one of the most toxic drugs that medicine has ever come up with. And much about Alzheimer's too.
So even the doctors at the time were saying this is a highly toxic drug. It doesn't cure this, and nobody even knows what causes it. So it was a complete mystery. So this again is part of the legacy. Let me just show you guys something. Now, here's the other thing I want to share with you guys in this article, and then I'm going to go into some more information. So in honoring Henrietta Lacks, acknowledges the importance of reckoning with past scientific injustices and advancing racial equality in health and science, says Tewedros. So this is ESA, right? It's also an opportunity to recognize women. So again, recognizing women as leaders and forerunners in the captivity, and which is not a normal situation, okay? Pushing forwards the woman as leader thing, the woman as independent, self-reliant, but this was stolen from her. So how is that? The whole thing is sick from the root to the top, particularly women of color who've made incredible but often unseen contributions to medical science. So this includes maybe the contributions that were made during slavery with all the gross experiments, okay? So that the award was received at the WHO office by her 87-year-old son, who's the last living relative who knew her, okay? And of course, they're honoring her. What a remarkable woman. This wasn't done with her consent. And then it says women of color continue to be disproportionately affected by cervical cancer. Well, I thought the problem was solved. What are they talking about? It wasn't, apparently. So, and this is the year to, so it says that it contributed to healing people of cancer, okay? Or allegedly treating cancer, not healing, forgive me, my mistake. Treating it. Treating doesn't mean you cure it or heal it. And so the problem still persists, but yet it's this is the inaugural year of the WHO's global strategy to accelerate the elimination of cervical cancer. So this is pushing Black women out into the limelight again around disease, and setting up an idol, a false idol, who did not consent to have her genetics stolen, right? Setting up this false idol so the Black women will look and go, oh yes, let's go and cooperate with everything these people have done, because a Black woman is being celebrated. We can be celebrated with these kinds of things. Let's be part of it. That's the marketing campaign that's being executed here. As of 2020, less than 5% of low-income countries and less than 30% of lower middle-income countries had access to the HPV vaccine through their national immunization programs. And then they're like, it's unacceptable to have not to have access to these things. Now listen to her contribution. Listen to this, the amount of money. Henrietta'S and her husband were raising 5 children in Baltimore when she fell ill, okay? And she died when she was only 31 years old. And then the sample was taken of the HeLa cell, okay? The first immortal line of human cells to divide in a laboratory. The cells were mass produced for profit, over 50 million metric tons of HeLa cells have been distributed around the world, the subjects of over 75,000 studies. So this is how people are studying the genetics of Hebrew women and using her genetic material to create stuff. So it says, again, polio that her studying her cells enabled the development of all of these things. Hemophilia, like Parkinson's, all of these things, breakthroughs in reproductive health, in vitro fertilization, and research on chromosomal conditions, genetic mapping. You're not supposed to be mapping this stuff. You're not supposed to be doing this stuff. This is the stuff the fallen angels do. So to me, this was like a real mind mess, if you want to use that word, right? Like it's gaslighting. It's celebrating you all at once, but at the same time, connected to all of these things that cause death, and trying to gaslight you, Black women, and draw you in, saying they're celebrating you in the process of stealing your genetics without your permission, robbing you, capitalizing off of you. So the scripture says, behold, Israel is cut off for her parts. Another example, right? As a Henrietta Lacks great-granddaughter, unfortunately, like no insult to her, but as a registered nurse, I'm proud to also be here today to honor my great-grandmother's legacy by advocating to ensure equitable access to the breakthroughs in her HeLa cells advance, such as this jab, okay? Her story is also a clear example of how Black women have been overlooked in healthcare and still are today. So despite this great contribution, Black women are still overlooked in the healthcare system. Remember, there was that doctor recently who died, who was a practicing doctor, and she was neglected by the hospital, and she died of the plague. So what are we, I don't know what's being celebrated here. Celebrating the death, the violence, the murder that's being committed on a mass global scale in various and sundry ways, right? I mean, it just seems like that's what it is. And so then they have a marketing campaign. So behind it is all this filth and murder and disease and abuse of children and women and lack of recognition of women, Black women in particular, and theft of genetics and everything. And then they just stick this stinky label on it, this thin plastic label, Cervical Cancer Elimination Initiative. And so we're going to launch that in celebration of her, and we're just celebrating her. So if anybody brings this up to you, please share this with them. So with that, I wanted to also share some more information with you guys. And that is on the other day, I was trying to talk to you guys about other genetic therapies that are coming against the diaspora. Now, hold on 1 second. I feel like I'm missing an article here. Oh yeah, so I wanted to read this to you guys, because here again, it is not a horrible, just a horrible image. So this is this campaign against Black and Indigenous people. Well, Black people are Indigenous, and then there's ones who came here also, right? Reverse Pangea. So what this article is talking about is the history of the treachery through jabs, okay, which I've already gone into. And so we'll just go into it quickly. And the Tuskegee syphilis experiment, remember what they did to Native Americans with smallpox and blankets. And the vaccine, I just went over this for polio. And you guys can read this article for yourselves, okay? African slaves were forced to clear the swamps in the Carolinas because whites could not be exposed to the deadly disease malaria. And I'm going to talk about other immune aspects that Black people have. Surgery was performed on Black women with no anesthesia, okay? By Marion Sims, who was called the father of gynecology. And the desire to escape slavery was designated a mental disorder. So these are the medical malpractice against the diaspora, the Yasharel diaspora, the Israelite diaspora. And when that polio vaccine came out, people said not to take it. It came out that it was being that the ones being administered were contaminated with this cancer-causing agent. So did she have an eternal living cell or an eternal death cell? Ask the question, like the real research, right? I'm not a scientist, but the Ruach HaKodesh, in the spirit, I'm like, why is all the evidence to the contrary, even her name, okay? And the way it was so widespread. And that when the vaccine was administered 55 to 1963, there was a direct link between the SV40, so that's the vaccine, and cancerous tumors. So were they using those eternally growing tumors that are like the Hydra to rather spread the issue? And there's the Tuskegee experiment. We've already gone into the whole AIDS. You can watch my video on the experiments done on children, which is just horrible. I hate showing those images, but people have got to understand. So there's a whole issue with scrutiny, right? And so I just wanted to mention those typical scenarios. I've gone into them in detail, so now I can put this aside. And so now I wanted to go over to the monoclonal antibodies, okay? So I've just done a little video here with a bunch of stuff, and I'm gonna pause it, but I'm just gonna share it here. One of the broadcasters from InfoWars, one of the reporters got COVID, and he was rejected for monoclonal antibodies. And so this white journalist, like I said the other day, was rejected for this therapy. And so there's a complaint out right now that why are white people being rejected for this therapy? Well, we're going to get into the genetics. As I said before, they are saying that people who are at risk for this are Black and Latino people are favored, as well as the elderly, to help them fight off COVID. So here's the story.
What? So I'm not going to be able to get it today? Is that unqualified? Yeah. What if I like smoke through the street or all this stuff? No. Okay. What if I were Black and Hispanic? Then I'd be able to qualify. Okay. I'm being denied medical service with my race. But Yeah,
So what I do, I go around and make sure everyone meets the criteria.
okay,
If the criteria that was set forth, you were 65, that's good. The healthy, and you're, healthy and no medical conditions, so research shows that you should be able to fight off COVID. Maybe it's for someone else, they put food a little more, make them a little more susceptible, should be in worse with COVID. Any questions?
no, I guess not.
All right, you heard?
Yeah,
So she's saying they have a black nurse marketing this therapy. And she's saying that white people and Chinese people do not qualify for this therapy. Okay, so let's find out a little bit more about it here.
Dr. Anthony Fauci now says people should be taking advantage of monoclonal antibody therapy. The antibodies are lab designed and can detect the virus.
Who's saying this? Fauci is saying this, okay?
Helping your immune system clear it. According to DHEC, the treatment helps prevent hospitalizations.
And so there's a testimony of somebody here who goes into it in detail. Oops. And I'm curious to know why monochromosomal DNA is needed to. And so let me just show you one more, guys. I don't know what that is. It has the word clone. Interesting question, though, to think about. So I'm sitting here, the other day going, what is it?
That is.
I don't know what it is.
Clone in it. And so
Has the word clone in it.
just did a little bit of research here. And so there's all of these videos on monoclonal antibody therapy. And the FDA has authorized COV monoclonal antibody therapy for post-exposure prophylaxis or prevention for the CV19. And the U.S. Food and Drug Administration today revised the emergency use authorization authorizing region code. Okay, so that's these clonal antibodies, okay, that are regulated and sold by a drug company.
So that's a specific brand, okay, that they have authorized, okay?
To be used for prevention for children 12 years of age and older and adults or high risk for progression to severe CV19, including hospitalization or death. And it's an off-label. That means it's not typically prescribed. It's been used to prevent cancer and other diseases, but it is in this particular situation, they're saying that it can also be used to fight CV19. And it is Peter McCullough, who is the doctor who has provided this. And he actually has a channel here you see on YouTube. He's broadcasting information through the Association of American Physicians and Surgeons here on YouTube. And so he's been talking about it since October 2020. And he is a cardiologist. He also treats autoimmune diseases and cancer. And so in this video, he goes into the symptoms and treatment, off-label treatment of the virus using these monoclonal antibodies. And so you can see it's prioritized for Black people and for Latino people.
Antibody therapy. Antibody says people should be taking advantage of.
So what?
Fauci now says people should.
So
Dr. Anthony Fauci now says people should be taking advantage of monoclonal antibody therapy. The antibodies are lab designed and can detect the virus, helping your immune system clear it. According to DHEC, the treatment helped prevent hospitalizations and emergency room visits. Prison health patients need to be 12 years of age or older. And the therapy is designed for at-risk patients, but not those currently hospitalized. The hospital says the treatment is time sensitive and must be given as soon as possible after a positive test and within 10 days of developing symptoms. Patients need a doctor's referral to get the treatment.
So there are a ton of videos, as you can see, on this: September, August, June, going all the way back. You can go 10 pages into Google and it talks about FDA approves first monoclonal antibody treatment for preventing COVID. And this is December 17, 2021, AstraZeneca's Evusheld. So this is being put out by AstraZeneca. And so it's being merged, the idea of using this with now AstraZeneca. Okay. And so they're saying vaccines are still the priority, but the jab is still the priority, but look at how many videos there are on this. And this is 10 pages in. This is just videos. This is not even articles. So they're really, 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 really heavily promoting it. So 28 pages in. And so they're doing all these explanations of it. All right, Florida government says they need at least 30,000 of these treatments. So you can see it's being highly promoted, and then it's being prioritized for Blacks and Latinos and elderly. And in my spirit, I'm just kind of like saying to myself, I'm just going through all these pages that have it, right? Baptist Health Little Rock, Missouri COVID plan features monoclonal antibody infusions. Treatment can be a lifesaver for many. Monoclonal antibody infusion treatment for high risk people. So I went 23, I could probably go more. So it's being highly promoted in the media. Okay, so here's a brief explanation. There's tons of these videos, as I showed you.
A lot about Regeneron and its monoclonal antibody treatments. But what is it? How does it work? And who can get it? I'm Brady Smith with some answers for you. So let's start with the big one. What is monoclonal antibody treatment? Well, it's a combination of two antibodies, laboratory-made proteins that mimic the immune system's ability to fight off harmful pathogens like viruses. That concoction is then given to patients through an IV, a process that takes about 20 minutes. Regeneron came up with the technology, and studies show it decreases the chances of hospitalization by 70 to 80%. Not just anyone can get it though. The FDA granted emergency use authorization for the treatment back in November, but it can only be used for people with mild to moderate COVID-19 symptoms or those who are high risk, like people who are older than 65 or those who have a chronic medical condition. If you're in one of those categories and want access to one of the state-run regional infusion centers, you'll have to get a referral from your primary care physician. If you don't have a doctor and want to schedule an appointment, you can call the 24-hour state infusion hotline. That number is 1-800-742-5990. Also, some hospitals and urgent cares can connect you with a doctor to get a prescription when you sign up for an appointment. If you want more information about any of this, we've got it on khuu.com.
So that's a really quick explanation. They got a hotline set up for you to get it right away. If you can't get a note from your doctor to get it, you can just call in and request it anyway. They've eliminated all the hurdles to getting it. And it just makes me a little bit even more curious to know what it is. And so I looked up this article in the Journal of Medicine on monoclonal antibodies, monoclonal antibody field, how mRNA therapeutics are entering the monoclonal antibody field. So this has a connection to mRNA, okay? I am by no means an expert on any of this, but I just, in my spirit, I got a real check. So I looked this up, and so I'm going to give you my cursory understanding of it, and just correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, or just add to it, please. This is certainly not exhaustive nor expert. So we identify key hurdles that mRNA-based approaches still need to fulfill this potential and ultimately replace the current protein antibody format. Antibodies are a natural defense mechanism to a frontline therapeutic. Despite the excitement, it soon became clear that the first generation of mAbs were facing serious problems with immunogenically provoked by the Maurine origin of these mAbs. Now, Maurine, this is like from Mauritania, Mount Moriah, Maurine, and it has its origins in Hebrew, light luminary, like Lucifer, okay? The root word is or, okay? Light, glorious, give, break of day, enlighten, shine, kindle. But the primary word is maor, more, which light. So that's like kindle a fire, light a fire, okay? Somebody kindling their own fire within you, okay?
Right, and this is often in the case of carrying a light or luminary, okay? Luminous body, okay? So I just want you to know the origins of the word, because everything always comes back to Hebrew. A light used of the sun or the moon. Now, bright, cheerful eyes, or a candlestick. So the sun and the moon are both lit by the heavens. They reflect the light of the heavens. They reflect the light of Yah. They generate the light of heaven, of Yah, okay? Just like a candlestick holds the light. It is not the source of light itself, and that is, but it holds and carries the light, okay? Just like a Luciferase carries light. Lucifer would carry light, right?
Or the Statue of Liberty carries light, right? It holds up that light, but it's not the source of it.
So this is the Maurine origins of these mAbs. Fortunately, in the early 90s, molecular biology and recombinant antibody production technology, in combination with detailed descriptions of antibody gene coding, induced a revolution in the mAbs industry, and these new technologies paved the way for generating an improved recombinant mAb formats that gradually contained less Maurine sequences and ultimately culminated in the design of fully human antibodies. So it went from light chain, heavy chain, variable region, the Maurine, to the chimeric, to the humanized, to the fully human. So this looks like a Y chromosome, right? Chimeric means a mixing of two different bodies. Now the scripture is very clear. You're not supposed to mix two different seeds. You're not supposed to defile yourself or mix like with kind. All right, so Leviticus 19:19. You are to keep my statutes. You should not crossbreed two different kinds of livestock. You shall not sow your fields with two different kinds of seed. You shall not wear clothing made of two different kinds of material. And then it goes into, there is due punishment if a man lies carnally with a woman promised to another man. So that's mixing seed when you share different, when two people share one person, right?
Can you guys hear okay? Just give me a thumbs up or a 1, okay? I see Leandra saying BOYF. I don't know what your acronym means. I'm getting old. I can't remember all of them.
And so
does that mean volume? I don't know. This is the mixing of seed, okay? About this with races, but again, this is always referring to the Canaanites. Are not supposed to mix with the Hebrews, but the Hebrews were allowed to marry Japheth, children of Japheth and Ham, just not the Egyptians or anybody who'd mixed with the Canaanites. The Hebrews were allowed to marry children of Japheth and Ham, just not the Egyptians or anybody who'd mixed with the Canaanites. So that is Torah, that's law. So you are not supposed to genetically mix anything or put it in your body, especially in your blood, to defile you, okay? But as Israel went into captivity to basically be dung upon the earth and dry bones to fertilize all the other seed of the earth, Jeremiah prophesies, Yeremiyahu 31:27-32 says, behold, the days come, saith Yahuwah, that I will sow the house of Yasharel, Israel, with the house of Yehudah, and with the seed of man and the seed of the beast. So the seed of the beast would be the fallen angels, and that's that Neanderthal gene, and that is the true grafting in. And so it's also like it's seed of beast, but it's both, right? So it's animals, but also Hasatan, the beast, right? His offspring. Why? Because Israel would fall by the edge of the sword and be led away captive into all nations after the fall of the temple in 70 AD. And Jerusalem, the people who are the palace and the city and the land, would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. And we know Babylon is falling, the times of the Gentiles are being fulfilled right now. It's game over. And that is the true grafting in. But back to the grafting in of this monoclonal gene therapy. Yahuwah actually killed 2 of Judah's sons with his wife Sheba, the Hamite, the Hamite, or Shua as it's pronounced in scripture. But he killed 2 of Judah's sons, because Onan and Er, because they were wicked and they spilled their seed. And also all the Levites had to divorce their Canaanite wives and cut off their Canaanitish children after the Babylonian captivity, because that was the clonal antibody variants used in therapy. Here's the overview. Fully Maureen on the left, or human monoclonal antibodies for recombinant species, are used in therapy in the middle, and then include chimeric mAbs composed of human constant regions and Maureen variable regions. And human mAbs or hypervariable domains of Maureen antibody are grafted on a human antibody. So this is how, they become mixed together and it becomes fully human. So it's grafted in, like people are grafted into a tree, just like the Gentiles are grafted in spiritually and primarily, most importantly, also not just spiritually and genetically, right, into the Hebrews. So we see that it has an acid format. And I don't know. So you see there that it says that the body is its own bioreactor. So it's powering itself off of that. And of course, the acid is the fire, right? So this is a different seed grafting itself, grafting whoever takes this stuff into its house. So the Gentiles are grafting into Israel's house. We're grafting in genetically and spiritually, and then this is grafting into a different house, grafting people into a different house. I haven't read too much into it, but all I do is need to know is what's going on in the spirit. And there is a connection now between the 2 of these. So this is why I would be on guard, because they're not being given to Asians or Caucasians or Europeans, white people, right? So what is the difference? Well, between white people and Latinos and Blacks, or the Hebrews, the Israelites. Well, I keep talking about this in my videos, and it's becoming clearer and clearer and clearer to me now that the land of Ham is India, China. I've already shown you in maps in my other videos that there was this whole area called Mu that was previously Ham's land, that there are more pyramids in North America and South and Central America than there are anywhere else in the world. And of course, there are tons of pyramids in China and India, and that is because that is the land of Ham. That is the West, and it goes all the way. And this is the immune systems. I talked about this yesterday, but one of the things I want to show you is that there is a difference between the genetics of Europeans versus Africans and Neanderthals as well. So Neanderthals would be the other gene, or the Mongoloid gene, right? And so the difference is that Africans, there's so many different things, but Africans tend to have a faster anti-inflammatory immune response. And so this article goes into detail on it. And researchers found strong evidence of a selection on genes that control immune response. Their evidence also shows that Europeans borrowed some key regulatory variants from Neanderthals, which in particular affect the way their immune system responds to viral challenges. And so here's some legitimate differences. And so researchers infected macrophages derived from 80 African and 95 European individuals with either Listeria monocytogenes, so Salmonella, etc., to look for differences in response and relating them to their ancestries. Their studies identified thousands of genes showing population differences in transcriptional response to infection. They also found that African ancestry is associated with a stronger inflammatory response, which limited the growth of bacteria. So why there would be a special or different response for more targeted communities, why these communities are more vulnerable when in fact, statistically, Blacks and Latinos are not more vulnerable, okay? The genetic and molecular basis of ancestry-related differences in disease susceptibility has been a mystery. These results provide a first description of differences in the immune response and associated genetic basis that might explain differences in susceptibility to disease between people of African ancestry and European ancestry. And of course, that includes Mongoloid peoples. So Sino was one of Canaan's sons, and then Canaan mixed with Gomer to create the Mao people. So those are Gentile and Hamitic people. These are the Canaanites who are mixed with the offspring of the fallen angels, or what you would know as the aliens today. So this is the bad seed that let the fallen angel gene come out in them that no one else was supposed to mix with. Sinim, the Chinese, a people noticed in Isaiah 49 as living at the extremity of the known world. They may be identified with the classic Sino, the inhabitants of the southern part of China, or Kana. Isaiah 49:12, a people very remote from the Holy Land towards the east or south, generally believed to mean Chinese who have been known to Western Asia from early times and are called by the Arabs Sin, and by the Syrians Sini. The Canaan winery, the world's finest winery from China. Babylon means confusion by mixing, and it was Esau, Edom, of the Shemitic descendants of Abraham, son of Isaac, who was the spearhead leader in all this mixing. He mixed with Ashkenaz, he mixed with Canaan, he mixed with Mount Seir, he mixed with Ham, he mixed with everyone. Yah said he spoiled his seed. And that's who these 10 nations come out of. And these 10 tribes replace the original Hebrew tribes of Western Europe, Hebrew nations of Western Europe. So Rome, Tartaria, whatever you want to call it, was a mix of people, Mongoloid people mixed with the fallen angel seed, divided into these groups, the identity stolen and transferred to these groups of Gentiles. And so that is the origins of these Mongolian groups that are Canaan, Ham, and Japheth, or the Gentiles mixed together. So the Native Americans are genetically a combination between Ham and Japheth. So in other words, the Gentiles and the Hamites, okay? See, what we know as the Mongolians, or the ancient empire of Tartaria, was when Japheth, or the Gentiles, mixed in with Ham, with the Canaanites, to create Mongoloid people. Western Europe did not belong to the Gentiles, to the Europeans. Japheth's land was Eastern Europe and Canada, which means exile. And so the Negroes are not Hamites. So the people of the transatlantic slave trade and diaspora are not Hamites. So Ham fathered the dark races, but not the Negro. He fathered Canaan, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Libyans. So he fathered Canaan, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and the Libyans. So Ham, son of Noah, was known to be the father of the dark races, but not the Negroes. So Negroes are kinky-haired people, okay? And it comes from the word Nagad. So the straight-haired East Indian people and Native American people and the Australian people and the Hispanic people you call Mexicans are all Hamites. And their land is Central America, China, India, an old land called Mu, and America. Okay, so that was the land of Canaan, China, what we know today, and America, Canada, actually, was the land of Japheth. Okay, that was given to Japheth. And so when Japheth mixed with Canaan, Canaan was considered Neanderthal or a Mamzer. They were the races you were not supposed to mix in with because they had a lot of fallen angel gene. That is the definition of Mongoloid. It's not if a Shemite or a Hamite mixes with Japheth, the Gentiles, the Europeans. No, they're allowed to mix because they're all the seed of Noah. But the Canaanites were mixed with the Neanderthal fallen angel gene. So they're called Mongoloid because they're Mongoloided and mixed in with the fallen angel gene, not the Adamic genes. Okay, so that is the difference. So North America is Canada is the land. It was given to Japheth, the Gentiles. America, Amorites, the Amorites were a strain of Canaanites who were mixed with fallen angel seed. And so when we're talking about Mongoloid, again, it's Japheth, the Gentiles, mixing with the Canaanite seed, okay? So, and we'll just review this again. So here's the genealogy here, Genesis 9:22. Hopefully this will play, guys. I don't know if it's going to. They seem to want to cooperate. I think they're on my computer. They know what I'm trying to play. I'm playing all kinds of.
Yah shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. So right now, Canaan is serving Shem. Is serving Japheth. So Japheth's rule is ending, and China has been serving America and serving Europe, and is in partnership with Russia and serving Russia also. China will never rise to rule the world because of this curse. And once again, Japheth shall dwell in the tents of Shem. When did he dwell in the tents of Shem? When he was Eliezer, he dwelt in the tent of Shem and was circumcised. Okay? And there's also, if you go into my other videos about the Gentiles
Okay, so let's just move it along a little bit.
archaite, and the cyanite, once
So these are
of
the-
Shem by extension. So it's very important to know this as a priest, as a king and a priest to the nations, so you can explain this to the Gentiles. So you can explain their role, that they've been dwelling in the tents of Shem, but this was a blessing and a curse. So back to Canaan again, Genesis 10:6, and the sons of Ham were Cush, Mitzrayim, Put, and Canaan. These are people of the burnt faces and dark races, okay? And so Canaan's offspring are as follows. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite and the Amorite, the Americans named after, America's named after Vespuccio, and the Girgashite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Sinite.
So we've been over a lot of this. So we know that is the descendancy of Canaan, and the America is named not after Vespuccio, that's an old video. So, but the Amorites, okay?
Or Shem mixing with the Canaanite seed, or just the right cup, okay? Canaanites, fallen angel seed, were the Amorites. That's why America is named Amorite cup. Amorite cup, okay? That's the land of Ham, the land of the Canaanites. The Amorites were a strain of the Canaanites, okay?
The engineered sick genocide. And if we don't do something now, we're going to lose everything, not just our land, not just our families, not just our culture, but we're going to lose something that is all of use. Okay, there are 7 strands of human DNA, right? The Africans hold 4. Asia to Europe hold 1 to 3. The tribal people here hold all 7 DNA strands. That makes you our family, okay? They are killing your ancestors, going to kill us.
So you heard her say the tree of knowledge, okay? Now, what does this look like to you? A tree, right? A tree. So, and of course, I've shown you guys this video before.
How is it that a group of people, African American, have been bludgeoned over their heads mentally and spiritually for hundreds of years and are still surviving? They couldn't understand it, and they said so in their book. The answer came out in 1996, why it is that not only have African Americans survived the worst mental and spiritual bludgeoning of any people in recorded history, but they are becoming champions of everything in which there is a level playing field. The American Association for the Advancement of Science. And this organization is composed of people who study about DNA and the genome. And you've been reading about the DNA and the genomes. Well, this group of scientists came upon an idea by accident at first, that different groups of people had different numbers of DNA series. Now, a DNA series means that when your DNA is located, and say they cut a hair from your head and you're subjected to certain tests, they say, well, this is the DNA of Minister Brown, and yours is different from everybody else in the world, all right? Then they found further that not only are their DNA series different, but the number of DNAs in them are different in different groups. Whites have a different number of DNA, and blacks have a different number of DNA series. Apes have a different number of DNA series. Then they found this amazing thing, that the greater the number of DNA series, the smarter the person, the group is, the greater the probability of genius within that group. So they tested the orangutans, these
15 geneticists from around the world. Now, these geneticists came from 9 of these 15 geneticists from around the world: University of Japan, University of China. Yale University is the headquarters of this organization called the American Association for the Advancement of Science. And you see it down there. Now, this was copyrighted in 1996. Pansy, which is an ape, and found that he had 5 DNA series. Then they went all into the different races of the world. They went into Europe and tested the DNA series of the English, the French, the German, the Spanish, the Russians, and found they had 6 DNA series. Then they put all of this, what they found from around the world, on a map. And this map really is called the intelligence map of the world, because they tested 116 different human groups and found their DNA series number. All of them, all over the world, have 6. And they put the numbers in form of a little flag that you can see on this map. These little flags have a color. And they show, oh, this is upside down. I'm sorry. Yeah. And they show that the English have only 6, and all into Europe, only 6. Went over into Japan and China, they only have 6. Over into America, which is predominantly European, they only have 6. Then they came into Africa, and they came to the part of Africa. Now, all the rest of them, they put in little flag colors. Those flag colors are orange, red, if you notice. But when they came to Africa, found out that the African people have 9 DNA series. From here, just below the Shanghai Empire, down to the foot of that. All those 10 nations, of which African Americans descended from one of them. We have 9 DNA series, the greatest possibility of genius in our group. Now it's answered this age-old question. How can a people survive being told they're nothing for 400 years? Never allowed to learn that they come from beautiful cities.
So, and here are some of the beautiful cities that they came from. Now, this is a very ancient map of the world that I'll show you in a second. So these are the Aborigines in Florida and Mexico, like, who were originally here in North America, okay? And they were a Black people. Some of the Aborigines here, the Mongoloids, the Native Americans have both the genes of the Gentiles and the genes of the Hamites. So they're considered Mongoloid. So those are the ones that I showed you before with the straight hair. But these are the Shemitic people. So they have kinky hair, and you'll find in the book titled America that you'll see images of them with their kinky hair and their black skin. And these are illustrations from that time. And these are the cities they dwelled in. The Neanderthal. These are the cities that they dwelled in. And these were cities they had taken from the fallen angels. They had warred and stolen from. Okay, but here are their buildings and structures that they lived in. This is them meeting with, I believe this is Charles V when he came over. or Philip, I can't remember which. So this is them meeting. They were black-skinned people. And these are the residents that they dwelled in. These are the buildings they built and dwelled in. So when you see these ancient structures with the Asherah poles on top and these heavy buildings, these are the buildings that they built and that they lived in, okay? Because they were worshiping these false deities. And so it's, you know, everyone's wondering about these buildings and everything, and it said the Tartarians built various ones. So now that these 10 tribes were known to worship these false gods and set up Ashtoreth poles and everything, which is what the charging stations on the tops of these buildings are, is that they power cities, but not only that, they power and give strength to the fallen ones who are in a state of degradation all the time. So these are illustrations of them actually living in these buildings and acting as kings and greeting emissaries from other nations and having processions moving through these buildings. These are their structures. And when you talk to the Chata Nation, they will say they were the mound builders. They were the red brick builders, and the red bricks are the iron infused bricks that generate power, okay? So you can go to my videos on Bianco to Negro, and you can listen to one of the Native American chiefs, the black ones with kinky hair, talk about that. She'll talk about it. Gotten these lands that the fallen angels had resided in with their huge power structures. So I'm saying that to say that, you know, back to Ham, this land here, if we zoom out on this map, the land of Ham was called the Indians or the Ethiopians, okay? So, and these were their lands. And so what is now called China over here, we zoom image of these nations from Central and South America, and then the straight-haired natives are from Canada and North America, basically America and Canada, okay? Hamites. The people in the South are Shemites, and Central America as well is a mix of them. You see correctly illustrated in this map, you see South America is actually shifted over to the right because it really is directly below Africa. And Africa would be butted right up against the continent there. So this is a correct rendering of the world map, although South America is often pictured as directly below North America, but North America is actually the West. That's why it's called the Western world, and it's Amorica and Canada, Columbus, Black nations of America. Okay, so this is an archive showing these images. You can also just look at the book America by John Ogilvy, and it talks about the tons of evidence of that. But so I just wanted you guys to be on guard against this kind of stuff that is coming in these monoclonal gene therapies. And guys, I'm trying to turn my camera back on. Oh yeah, just go like this, sorry. So I just want you guys to be on guard with these gene therapies and to understand what it is that they are, okay? I don't know exactly, but I think I have illuminated enough about them to give you some basic understanding about them. And so the reason we would celebrate this woman, I don't know if it's so much of a celebration. My sense is that this gene was taken from her, this cancerous gene. And it may be involved in many therapies, not just for experimentation, but for grafting. So grafting in these things, if you find a Hebrew woman who has this, then that's a key to passing this genetic trait on to other people and to edit genetic code to allow disease to come into the body, okay? So that's why I brought that up. I'm really excited because I think I see some like Eastern European people in here. And I don't know if you guys are just trolling me or if you guys are YouTube operatives. I'm sorry, but I hope you're just interested, because the whole question of Tartaria is really, really interesting, and the lands of Japheth. Because there was this, it seems like there was this whole shift that took place and shifted the empire of Japheth. And I used to have, like, my best friend was a Ukrainian girl when I was a kid. And she would go all the time, she'd go patah, patah, which means to, in Japheth, in Hebrew, it means enlarge, enlarge. And that's the prophecy that Yah would enlarge Japheth. And so what eventually happens is that his lands were, after Israel lost their identity, forsaked the covenant, they were shut down by Yah, the creator. And that it's important to know, if you are a Gentile, that that identity was given to you, but now it's coming back to Israel. And so with the Great Reset, it's resetting back to Africa, and it is now time to join the house of Israel. And that is the people of the transatlantic slave trade are true Israel, okay? And so there's a lot of people saying other stuff, but if you're interested, just do the research. And so I'm gonna share some more stuff here with you guys. I'm just looking for some files here. So yeah, Henrietta lacks. She seemed to lack some immunological strength when most Black people, even today, were living to be 100 years old. I know African Americans who live to be 100 and older, okay? So what was that really about? And so here's the compact between Japheth and, let me show you, and Canaan working together. Just show this to you. To redraw the map of the world. I've already talked about this. And so this is when the times of Israel were over. Now the times of the Gentiles are over, but this was when they redrew everything. Okay. And so it's just important to know where you come from. And of course, we know that Hadrian conspired to hide Israel, to redraw really the map of the world, okay? So we know that there's the largest pyramids are in China, they're in America, they are in East India, okay? And also in Eastern Europe. They found these other pyramids, they're buried mounds, okay? And there are other names that correspond with Ham being involved with the Eastern Europeans, and that is Kamchatka, this land that was called Kamchatka, Kemet, Kamat, Chaka. So Ak, Kamat, Ak means brother, Ka, so T is the Tav, it's his tree, right? His tree is your family tree. Kamet, set apart tree of light, and Kamchatka was part of Tartaria. So when Ham's empire was falling, Esau set up this union between the Gentiles and all the Mongolians and Ham. And because they decided to hide the West until the time of Babylon, right? They hid it, and what they did was they used the Tartarians to go into America and South and Central America and tear down all of those old empires and build up their cities, okay? So when you watch these Tartaria videos, you see that that's what they did, okay? You see them building a lot of cities. So if you look at the Banff Springs Hotel, you look at, these are the Capitol in Edmonton, the legislature building, you see all of this European architecture again. So that's either coming from the fallen angels, and it was already there, and there was an intermingling of these groups together. And so the Gentiles were practicing a lot of paganism. They were among the 70 nations. So when the Tower of Babel fell, Okay, when the Tower of Babel fell, it was because 70 nations were worshiping this tower and the fallen angels. They had been given to the fallen angels, to 10% of the fallen angels to rule over the 70 nations. And among them were all these Gentile nations. And so Israel was the only set apart nation that kept their language. They didn't have their language confounded, and they were not worshiping the fallen angels. And so by the time the Russians get out there and fully expand their empire, or they may have already been there, which I actually sincerely believe, because the lands, I'm going to do a video on the lands of Japheth, but he was also given the inner lands around the Rubus Negro at the center of the earth. Okay. He was given the lands at the center, like just near the Rubus Negro, up at the center of the earth. Let me see if I have a map here I can show you guys. And so these were all the promises given to the Gentiles. They would dwell in the tents of Shem. They would get the identity of Israel. And this was to graft them in and to save the Gentiles. And of course, I'm mixed with Gentile. So here's an ancient map of what you call Japan, but the lands get even closer together there. So we see here, this is North America. This is the land of Japheth up here in the north. And so a lot of these inner islands around the Rubus Negro were given to Japheth, and down through here, and this land here. And then of course, Ham lost a lot of his land. Here's another good illustration here. You see Terra Azrat, which is where the 10 tribes went, some of them. And so these, you see how far pushed over South America is? That's South America, because this is the south. This is the west. It's divided this way. North, right? North, south, and this is west. Africa is east. East, south, west, north. That's the true order. Okay, and so Ham got the west, and the west is determined for destruction. Okay, so I hope this has been helpful to you guys in terms of understanding the genetics and the genealogy. And please try and remember that, you know, when I'm talking about these subjects, that even the Israelites had Shiva, and Shiva means destruction. That was the first wife of Judah. Okay, so even these other nations were grafted in. So this is now Yah's time of everyone to make their final decision. So with that said, I'm going to go. May Yah bless you and keep you and cause his face to shine on you. May he be gracious, lift the light of his countenance, and give you peace. Thank you so much for watching. And I will ask you guys to please go to livelightwell.com and make a donation to me there. And you can get a calendar for $12 to $20 or more. And you can request a calendar or a cookbook so you can keep the appointed times. So you just go here and you shop. So you can get Chaya, Eat Life and Fast, Chaya, Eat Life and Fast, or you can get the appointed times calendar, which is almost expiring, but I'll do another one. So you just email me later on to get the other one once it's updated. Okay, so bless you and thanks again for watching, and I hope to see you guys here again. It's really a pleasure to share this with you. And please like, subscribe, and share. Please like, subscribe, and share. I have a very shadow banned channel, but I also have some of the most intelligent viewers on my channel. And some of this stuff can go over people's heads, but I think it's pretty simple. It's just stuff you could teach a child. Tell them to look at the map and see, right? So now is the time of choice. We're at the end of the world, and I encourage everybody to choose Yah, choose the house of Yasharel, okay? Choose the house of Yasharel, who fell by the sword and was led away captives into all nations until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. And that is wrapping up right now, okay? And Israel was trodden down by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So it is still being trodden down, not only the people, but the land. So now is the time to choose Yah's house and his people. Hallelujah. So bless you guys, and I will talk to you again later. Shalom.